If you just joined, the program is the FrontBurners on Sook News TV. There are segments of the show, there is news analysis, and there is policy discuss. So we've done the part one of policy discuss. It's now for us to have a second conversation, and this is on the AU summit, which started on the 28th of January and ended on the 16th of February. The theme this year is looking at the issue of reparation and racial healing for African. You do know that there's a history to that from the time of slave trade and up to now. The discourse around reparation has been ongoing. Africans asking for reparations from countries that have benefited or that benefited from the slave trade. And then there's a need to talk about healing. Now, those whose ancestors were taken away as slaves over the years, they have descendants now. How do they heal from that experience? Even if some of them were not born at that time, but getting to read history and you know what has happened for communities that had some first relationship because of the roles played during the era of slave trade. How do they come to healing so that peace can be restored? This is what we would be discussing this morning with our guest, who is the Honorable Consul General of Antigua and Barbuda to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Ambassador Wallace. He joins virtually this morning. Good morning, sir. It's good to see you the first time this year, 2025.
Happy New Year, a blessing. Happy New Year. And I see that you have a new program, the Front Burner. I hope we are going to burn this question alive, because it needs, some heat under it, for sure.
We have the match, so we want to ignite the conversation so that we can spark change. All right, let's go straight into the matter discuss. We also have another guest who would be joining us virtually, so it's not going to be just Ambassador Wallace. So because this is a very critical matter, we would be talking extensively about it. Ambassador Keshi, who is the former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nigeria, has joined us virtually. Good morning, sir. It's great to have you on the FrontBurners.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Good morning to you.
We're delighted to host you. Okay, the 38th Ordinary Session of the African Union has taken place, and it had in attendance several heads of state and leaders and other delegates who were there to discuss the future of Africa and also how Africa is going to relate with the rest part of the world. Before we get into the reparation discourse, the 38th Summit of the African Union, were there certain expectations that you had, Ambassador Keshi and Ambassador Williams, you had regarding that summit, that perhaps in your thinking or in your assessment, how do you assess the 38th session of the AU?
Good morning to you and the rest of the team here at Sook News. Expectations were very high in the fact that the AU, everyone wanted to see a new energy, a new life, Pan-African outlook, and a transformative change to the organization called the African Union, which has not, in many people's view, have not lived up to the expectation of a united Africa when we have issues of security, wars, peace initiatives not being handled, as they should be, as a union, a united force, and having a standby AU military intervention where we have incursions in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, and all these affairs which are keeping back the growth of the continent. So I think the expectation now is to have someone who is seasoned. And I think the heads of governments who was at the 30th session made the right choice. You needed a seasoned diplomat like Mahmoud Yusuf, who is a young man, relatively speaking, who has over 2 decades in foreign affairs and diplomatic relationships, and has, from his speech, laid out the groundwork of what he needs to tackle first. And his first priority, he said, is peace, conflict resolution, as a need for the continent to go forward. So he's saying the right things. He also talked about transformative change for the AU. So he's sounding the right bells, in my opinion, as to what is required for immediate a resolution of the AU's involvement in the continent and what we need to see. So expectations are exactly the, I mean, he's laying out the store exactly as the expectations of the continent require right now. We need peace and security to start economic growth and moving forward. And he also talked about the AFCTA, which is very vital to the bloodline of the continent for us to move forward with economic growth. So expectations are that we have someone who is young, vibrant, and has ideas as he laid out his vision for the African Union.
Ambassador Keshi, could we have your thoughts on the AU 38 summit?
Thank you very much, and greetings, Ambassador. For us in Nigeria, particularly for some of us in this business, we didn't have too much expectations. We hoped, and we are glad it happened that our representative at the AU Ambassador Adjoye, who has completed his first tenure, that he'll be re-elected for another term of 4 years, and he was elected, and we are happy about that. And secondly, as the ambassador has said, we were also hoping that a dynamic head of the organization would be put in place. Because as we speak today, you know, I'm not too sure how many people in Africa paid attention to the summit at all. You know, if you look at Nigerian newspapers this morning, I'm not sure you see AU making headlines. And if you look at other African newspapers, similarly, the same thing. What does that tell you? I think the leaders and the continental organization itself, it's not involving the people. It's not reaching out to the people to make them understand that this is the people's organization representing the African continent, and that and bringing them into you know, what they are doing. So you now find out that it's like this is oftentimes these days the meeting of officials who go together, take a decision, and nothing more is heard about the decision they've taken, whether anyone has been implemented or not implemented. So the AU really has to do more for itself to reach out to the people. You know, in the early 60s, 80s, I mean, part of the 80s, yes, for obvious reasons, because there were issues that were common to the whole of the region, the issue of decolonization. And so subsequently, you know, AU virtually mobilized the continent, OAU as it was called then. You know, did the best it can to mobilize the continent. And because this battle was going on in various regions and states, or nations that were emerging from colonialism, it really made headlines. Every school child of my age at that time, we knew about the OAU. But today, that we are confronted with new challenges, particularly on the economic front, for me, I think the AU should do more, you know, to bring in the people and to ensure that the backing of the people that it's representing, not just the officials that gather annually, make headlines for themselves, and then And then they move on, and most of those things are not implemented anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to direct this question to Ambassador Wallace. Now, most African countries in the African Union and the recent 38th summit were talking about reparations for the historical injustices meted out to Africans by their colonial lords. It appears that the African Union is taking this direction, and it's obvious that they are going to earn the frown disposition and frowning countenance coming from the West. Is this going to, by any chance, affect the foreign relations with Nigeria, with some other countries in Europe, or in Africa entirely? We're going to have some problems with foreign relations with those from whom we are requesting that they pay some form of reparations.
Well, I'm happy that you are making the point and you made a reference to Nigeria. I'm a descendant of African slavery, and I've been reintegrated into the continent. Nigeria, of course, along most of the west coast of Africa, gave most of their, human capacity, human knowledge by slavery, which was, arbitrarily taken from the continent and helped to build other civilizations in Europe. And we were never paid for nor given the opportunity, like the Indians. The Indians had, a servitude for 7 years, and they chose to come to the colonies and serve for 7 years as coolies, as they called them then, and then they were free. So they had, an engagement with the ex-colonials to come and serve in that territory, and they did that of their own free will. We were never given that opportunity. We were taken, right, enslaved, and put to work in the most inhumane conditions over 400 years. Calculate the worth of the labor that was employed free of charge, right, without any contract, and in the most inhumane conditions, and tell me, are we not supposed to get reparations to help rebuild ourselves, not only in the diaspora, but in areas where the continent suffered? I think it's two sides of the coin in terms of reparations. One, the descendants should be paid and given back their lost labor, and their generations benefit from it. Some slave owners are actually trying to do something now about it. From London, they've come to some territories in Antigua and Barbudas, and there are the Harvard School, whose university was built on slavery money, right, also are trying to make some sort of remission to us in the Caribbean. And then on the other side, the countries where the slaves were taken from, Nigeria in particular, perhaps contributed about 50% of the slavery, and the rest of West Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Gambia, even as far as Angola. So we should be repaid for that free, labor that was taken and not contracted to or from nor engaged. So at the moment, it is important that, yes, the theme, and I do hope, and I would love to contribute to that cause with the African Union, if allowed to, for us to pursue it. Because if you had the Jews of 6 million who had just a short period, a very short period of incarceration and being treated in the most inhumane condition, getting reparations, why can't we, and why should the West balk at this? Pay up. And I think it's very important that they realize that we are no longer fools. We know what you did. We know how you did it. We can calculate what is required for us to be repaid, and let's have the money. I'm not interested in talk. I think it is important that we do exactly what the Jews did. We get reparations, and we get it justly. We calculate what was taken from us, the labor, the non-contracts, the removal of millions from the continent, and the continent suffered for it as well, because some of our best, strongest, and brainiest were taken at the time.
Keshi, now if we're looking at reparations, as there are arguments for reparations, there are arguments against reparations. Now, the United States President Donald Trump doesn't agree with reparation. He says that's not going to happen. And that's the position that some European leaders also hold. It is on record that from 14th to 19th century, about 12.5 million Africans were shipped abroad as slaves. And this happened within a period of 400 years. If we calculate that, that comes to an enormous figure. Now, if we're talking about reparations, one of the arguments against it is that should the generations that did not perpetrate a crime be made to pay for that crime? What's your take? There seems to be a glitch in the connection from Ambassador Keshi. But Ambassador Wallace, could you respond to this? The argument against reparation that a generation that did not commit a crime is being held accountable now. What's your take?
Well, I think that's a very obnoxious. Go ahead, Ambassador Keshi.
We haven't responded to the question.
Yeah, I think that's a very obnoxious view from the West, who know that they benefited, and whatever the generations are that came from that benefit must, if they are, fair and just, would want to make sure that amends are made and pursue reconciliation by payment. They've got the money, they benefited from it, their civilization benefited from it, and therefore, if they are human beings, as they say they are, and humanitarian, pay up. This excuse that most Western nations use that, well, it was our grandfathers, it was our fathers, it was our great-grandfathers, that does not hold any water. You benefited. The life you're living today is because of what they did. So you have to make a commitment to show that you, as a beneficiary, pay back some of those benefits that you're enjoying today. Whatever the percentage is from your economy, paid back.
The second argument is this. Now, if we talk about slave trade, what is trade? It's a business transaction between two entities or two people. So if there was trade, it means that something was paid to those who sold the slaves. Who's talking about reparation from those who received money or whatever they received as payment from the slave trade to those who were shipped abroad?
Right. So if you're talking about the people who on the continent participated with the colonizers, then we have to also ask the question, can we identify who they were? How much of that was taken from the amount that was shipped abroad? Because don't forget, most of these colonizers went into the depths of the continent themselves and captured and removed these people. If there were some collaborators, there were, I would imagine, a percentage. Identify who they are, and yes, ask them to pay back from their benefits and their communities, whoever they are. But I'm not aware if they have been identified and how much of it can be proven. The fact of the matter is, if you're talking about, they have used the euphemism slave trade, but nobody is talking about the fact that people were captured and forcibly put on boats and sent to the Caribbean and North and South America. We have to talk about those things that actually happened, that we know of, that were not trade. if there were trades, and there were some trades, identify who they were, and let's also put them to the sword.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wallace. I want to actually take you back to the second part of the question I asked you first, and that has to do with the foreign relations. I know the African Union is asking for this, but definitely there's going to be some form of argument that is going to pan out to frosty foreign relations between African countries and those that we are requesting for reparations from. How would you assess the relationship between Africa and those whom we are requesting for? Is it going to be sour relationship at this point in time? Are we going to amend those?
Well, we are talking about relationships. So if a case is made, like there are cases, you go to The Hague, you go to other places where people have committed crimes. Those are brought up in the light of what has happened. If the case is made properly, and I don't see how they can be frosty relationships. There might be pushbacks, but it should not affect the fact that we have a solid case. Here are the proofs. Here are the case notes. Here is the presentation we are making. That should not stop relationships between the accused countries and their engagement, because they do need Africa. They do need to relate with Africa. They are benefiting from Africa still today, and therefore I would think that they would want to tackle this diplomatically. To say that they will be sour or there will be, frosty relationships, diplomatically, I don't think so. I think what will happen is that they would want to argue their side of the case that is being presented. And if we do our homework right, the African Union, then yes, it is an engagement. It is an argument that has to be fashioned out on what we have presented to the countries and the bodies who will assist us for reparations.
We're talking about reparation. It seemed like there have been some form of reparations, or are we restricting reparations to money? Monies should be paid to Africa. There have been returns of looted artifacts, and some monies have been attached to the return of those artifacts. Can we say that to an extent, Africa has gotten some reparation?
No, that is not reparation, sorry. That is looting. That is robbery. That has nothing to do with reparations. That is looting of artifacts. That's looting of what we call booty, and that, if it's returned, thank you, but has nothing to do with the human aspect, which is we as slaves and descendants of slaves were taken forcibly from the continent and used, abused, and misused. It is important that we separate the two. Return of artifacts is just stolen goods, and those stolen goods were brought back. If they are brought back, thank you very much. We will say to them, you stole it's like coming into your house, stealing your television, and then bringing it back. Fine. That's okay. Okay, we thank you for bringing back our television, all right? But what you did to us, capturing our wives and children and taking them away, and we lost the ability to have them contribute to the home and to the building of the home, that is a completely separate matter, completely different.
Now, let me take your attention away completely from the reparations matter and bring into the fore one of the proposal that the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, submitted to the African Union when we're talking about security. And he was making attention to the Gulf of Guinea and the need for it to be policed so as for security to govern the trade that will take place in that route. The president of Nigeria is clamoring and making advocacy for a call for there to be a combined provision of maritime security to police the Gulf of Guinea. Do you see this as enhancing security in the region, in Africa, and also to facilitate trade among member states?
Well, of course, he's absolutely correct and right for that because, as you know, there are incursions now uh, in the Gulf of Guinea where you have Chinese trawlers um, uh, taking away most of the fish feedstock from the coastal areas and depriving our fishermen of their livelihoods. You have pirates and bunkering from Western countries who come into Nigerian waters, take oil under, dubious circumstances, and also the rest of the west coast of Africa, where a lot of things are happening. And then again, you have now incursions of cartels from Colombia and other places who see the west coast now as a soft spot for bringing in their drugs and shipping them from the West Coast, so trying to make West Africa a hub for drugs as well. So yes, it is absolutely necessary that we police that area. And apart from that, having outside military forces bringing their warships along the coast for what and to do what, right? We need to police and protect the West Coast very, very strongly to ensure that we have security of our coastline for the reasons that I just explained.
If we look at the theme for this year's 38th AU Summit, it's building a united front to advance the cause of justice and the payments of reparations to Africans. So if we also look at some of the areas that they intend to look at, it's racial healing, talking about reparations and racial healing. Now, how do we get to the part of racial healing if reparations are yet to be paid to Africa?
Well, why should we talk about racial healings when we are not paid for what has been done to us? It seems like an easy answer that let's have a racial healing and avoid the economic disadvantage that we have. Disadvantage. There's nothing wrong with racial healing. We talk to and we do engage with all races around the world. I don't think that should be the topical matter. What has happened with apartheid in South Africa and still ongoing with wanting a separate state, etc., is showing that some people are not intent on racial healing. If you're intent on racial healing, then, for example, give us back the land that you stole. If you're talking about racial healing, stop, subtle apartheid. Make sure that we and our minerals are protected. If you're talking about racial healing, I want to see real racial healing. Racial healing means absolutely implementing areas of what hurt us. What hurt us? You took our land. You took our people. You're taking our minerals for free. Follow the model of Burkina Faso. Follow the model of Mali and others that we now need to take control of our future. And yes, we will engage you on the right level. That's racial healing, that you respect us. You respect us as we are humans and you're equal. We are not your slaves anymore. If you're talking about racial healing, let's do it right. Let's get what is ours. Let's respect ourselves. Be respected by you. Stop using us as fodder. Stop using us as your floor cloth and respect us as individual human beings. We're talking about healing. Let's do it the right way. Let's absolutely do it the right way. Racial healing should be implemented in the real way. Give us back our land. Give us back our minerals and our resources. Pay us for taking them. That, for me, is racial healing.
AU is advocating a united front from all African countries to the demand for reparation. Now, there are also talks about debt forgiveness being one of the steps to take towards reparation. Do you agree with this?
Okay, well, as I said, we should have a basket of how we get our reparations. I just talked about some of it, land, paying us back. And if there are large debts, yes, if you wipe out the debts of all the African countries, that's a part of the contribution. But the debt is so huge in terms of the debt they owe us, the debt that they owe us, that is just one part of the contribution of reparations. So yes, I will say, let's have the calculation of the debt forgiveness, minus it from the total amount to be repaid for labor that you got for free, that was not paid for. And let's do a calculation. We have actual scientists who can actually work out what is worth to us. And yes, we could find a formula of a basket of debt forgiveness plus land plus forced labor. All those can be put into the mix and do a calculation, and we come out with a number. Let's say it's a numbers game now. Let's do it properly. Let's get the calculation.
Okay. You do know that it is one thing to ask for reparation. It's another to actually do or pursue development and improve Africa with reparations when they eventually paid. We've had the issue of relooting looted funds in Africa. Let's take Nigeria, for example. Looted funds have been recovered, funds that were looted by former head of state, Sani Abacha. And up to now, Nigerians are still asking, please show us what has been done with the money. In several other African countries where looted funds have been returned, hardly can you point to what those monies have been used for. Now, if Africa is calling for reparation to be paid to the continent, are we sure, or do we have that confidence in the leadership of African countries that if those monies are paid, Africans who their ancestors were sold as slaves could say we are better for it because reparations have been paid?
Okay, very, very nice question, Blessing. I think let's talk about thinking outside the box. If money has to be repaid, let it come to a trust fund, reparation trust. Let it be administered along, the lines of, for example, what do we have as our priorities for these reparation funds for the countries that were devastated by slavery? And I think community building, all the things that needed, and perhaps even if we have a fund that could be paid out as social payment to the population, like Gaddafi did when he split his oil revenues to the population. Let's have really good programs that can be beneficial to the population. Let's give back to the population what they deserve. Good health care, building of hospitals. These are things that can be seen to be implemented as part of the trust fund. And the trust fund can be administered by a group from the entire African continent that were non-beneficiaries of this very horrid and horrendous, attack on our population as a continent. You're talking about what the Belgians did, what the Germans did, what the British did, what the French did, what the Spanish did, what the Portuguese did. It's all there. So let's have a trust fund that is governed and by all the members of the African Union states, and plan out a program that will raise the benefits to the people. Whether we say free education for all, free health care for all, that to me is also a very positive way of making use of the reparations fund, and is not touched by, the leaders of the countries, because the money is not going into the coffers of the countries, but into a trust fund that is administered properly.
Ambassador Williams Wallace, the Honorable Consul General of Antigua and Barbuda to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We're grateful that you could be a part of the show today. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you.